People who failed at launching a business or startup. What did you do wrong? Hired friends. Didn't do that this time around. Worked out. A friendship based on business is much stronger than a business based on friendship. I considered starting a business with my closest friend. Before we even drew up the business plans, I realized what a mistake it would be. We were bickering about many things before we even got the chance to go to the bank, and I'm grateful we backed out. We would have ended up bitterly hating each other afterwards and probably losing our life savings in the process. Entered an oversaturated market with zero business, marketing or sales experience. In hindsight, my chosen niche wasn't specific enough. I've had a follow-up idea from the experience I had, but I have zero intention of actually executing it. I was about to comment, but you basically said the same thing I would have. My invented job title was Story Design Consultant, Video Games. I had no clients and it tanked in the first year. I didn't have enough money to operate the first year at a loss. Seriously. It is so important to have that. I mean, technically my business could have survived, but I'd have starved. When factoring in year 1 projections. Don't forget your salary. Yep. Self-funded and thought I was being responsible by not getting investors. I was profitable, just barely, after 14 months. But was looking at the next several years of ups and downs and was killing my relationship with my husband and my health. If I'd had another $50,000 we probably could have survived. Starting another venture as we speak, but I'm looking for an investor and putting a small salary in for myself right up front. Not me, but a friend. He was a legendary home brewer in my area and decided to start his own commercial brewery after he retired. Apparently commercial brewing is a totally different animal than home brewing. And his recipes that were amazing in 5-10 gallon batches now tasted like crap when they are brewed on a larger scale. He doesn't know the business very well either. So he's failing to get the right connections and contracts to get his beer out there. He's not out of business just yet. But he's privately confided to me that he can only keep the doors open for another month or 2. It's a shame because he put a good chunk of his nest egg into the business. Then he should work in the microbrew business. Small batches. More variety. Don't do what everyone else is doing. Microbrews are by far some of the best on the market in terms of variety and taste. Why doesn't he just stay local? Not everyone needs to be a million gallons a year kind of brewery. Convinced myself that quitting my job and becoming a one-man band IT technician was a great idea. Except I live in the middle nowhere and there was already excessive competition. In reality, it was an excuse. I needed to quit working at my current job and grieve the death of my father. But at the time I couldn't accept that I was not mentally well and couldn't work. I had pressure to keep working from my employer as well, so lied to them and myself. I spent a month running my business before deciding I'd develop a coke habit. Was about 1 month away from being homeless before sorting my shit. So my business was actually just an excuse to go away and grieve. This was 3 years ago, doing amazing now. No drug habit and just got hired as a DevOps engineer equals. I was too naive. As an engineer, I just wanted to build a product for the customer and then hope that it would sell itself and I would be on my merry way. So I built dispatching software for a local truck company. After I finish building it out, I do some research and there are at least 10 other competitors with better I mushroomed. I started an online business in my bedroom which grew to be the largest of its kind in the country. Went from 1 laptop in my bedroom to over 1 million sales in 3 years and shipped globally. 6 years later I was answering emails one after the other for at least 10-12 hours a day. Had 9 full-time employees. At the ripe old age of 21 I got ambitious and expanded. Took over warehousing. Launched 3 sister brands under the same umbrella, and by 25 I was burned out. Mentally and physically, and had lost that spark. You can always keep pushing, but when that spark fades it is the hardest thing in the world to reignite. 5 years later and I'm trying to rekindle it for round 2, but next time I know how to do it. Burnout's are real. I was very close to getting entirely burned out last year. I still got out of bed. Somehow. Even if it took me an hour. Have you talked to a psychologist? Helped me a lot. I got the wrong investor. My dad. My dad was the kind of parent who couldn't trust me. And unfortunately still thinks he's a fellow kid who totally understands today's tech scene when he's, well, let's just say his idea of a great app is to load everything with ads. Create 50 unnecessary additional steps to force everyone to see what our app can do. And oh, the 80s silver, blue and yellow gradient effect everywhere. I started an independent engineering consultant firm that was made up of only me. Turns out I spent so much time trying to get old customers to pay me that I didn't spend enough time looking for new customers. Side note, I will never ever sign a contract with an art collective ever again. They agreed to pay me a flat rate, $5,000, to automate a project they were building that involved some motors spinning some discs or something. The job took me maybe 4 hours not counting the travel, but hey, they agreed to a flat rate. They never sold the piece and never paid me. Even though my contract had no language tying my compensation to project success. Anyway, they dissolved the collective and reopened it under a new name. And I never got my money. Repeat that story about 4 more times and I went back to working for someone else. I've launched multiple pen names for smut. And a fair few of them have just died in the water. At least. I hope that's water. Close bracket. The biggest failing was assuming that I could try and use one name for all the fetishes I wrote about. Assuming that people who bought in one niche would buy in others. Not so. People like what they like. And they like to know they can buy more of it consistently. Pick a lane and stick with it. It's a lot easier to build a reputation for quality in one niche than all niches simultaneously. Absolutely nothing. We accomplished all the goals we had. But in the end it didn't matter and our business model was essentially regulated out of existence because competitors of ours were being unscrupulous. We actually successfully worked with our state legislator to kill a bill that would have made our business illegal. But in the end it was slapped with a regulation that made it completely unfeasible to continue operating. For context, we were an online healthcare company that employed doctors and had appointments over Skype. We were strictly non-narcotic. But some of our competitors were writing Vicodin scripts online without having ever met the patient. So after we killed the bill and met with our state representatives, had them into our office, etc., the Board of Community Health, like the Bar Association for Lawyers, issued an opinion that any doctor engaging in any online healthcare that was not in conjunction with a hospital could lose their license. Everyone quit overnight right as we hit our projections to hit 1M in profits during the second year of business. This was especially crushing to me because my contract and equity wasn't vested until the second year had completed and we hit several targets. All told, I lost quite a bit of money because that opinion letter was written in May instead of 6 months later. And I ended up walking away with basically nothing. On the plus side, the experience landed me a pretty good job and I have a solid career now. I never started a business, but I work in accounting and have seen a lot of businesses succeed fail. I think the most simple thing that goes wrong is just people often don't really do market research and start a business that they are passionate about, but it's for a product or service that the people in that area don't want or need. Also, I think some people have good idea but don't have any or enough experience in owning or running a business and underestimate the work it takes. Yup. 2 friends of mine recently opened up a cafe in our part of the city. They have never worked in a cafe before. Or any hospitality industry. For that matter. They have no idea how to manage inventory or even how to hire decent part-time employees. They put on a big show about running a successful business, but I know that they're hemorrhaging money. Worst part is that they're too prideful to listen to anyone. Whether customer or actual industry professionals. Advice or feedback. I don't think they'll last another half year. Years ago I tried freelancing hooking up electronics. I made a decent amount of mistakes but nothing totally crazy. I also most definitely didn't know as much as I should have before starting something like that. But my biggest mistake was not getting bonded in any way. I had a really close call where a customer threatened to send me to court for breaking some electronics I didn't even touch. I doubt he would have won, but who knows. What I do know is I wouldn't have been able to afford to find out. I shut it all down after that. Not my company, but I was briefly an employee. Two guys put up a little bit of money. Investors put up over $1 million to put up IT company. Hires me to design and implement network infrastructure. Hires a web designer. Hires a lady to design and implement a call center. Signing on they said, exact quote, "You will manage our data center." Guess what? They had one rack and a data center. Not a data center. So I set up a basic network infrastructure. And set up monitoring for it. It wasn't huge, we had about 10 or less customers. Owners asked me to document everything I did. After which they fired me. They did the same thing to the call center lady. She got it all designed for them and they fired her. They kept the web guy on for a while. But he could see the really obvious writing on the wall and left for greener pastures. Owners did something with the investors' money. And then the whole shop folds. Tried to launch a technology news gaming news site. Didn't make use of pop-ups to get users to register for newsletter to our. When I ran a shuttle service for a nightclub, it was going good for about 3-4 weeks. Customers loved the price point. I was making bank. My drivers were making bank. Only problem is none of us had commercial licenses. Nor insurance. Plus no business license, etc. I was renting the vans in cash from a rental company. Cops found out. We got shut down. I was going restart after becoming legit, but then discovered the reason I was the cheapest game in town that was rolling in money is because everyone else was following the rules. My business model failed once you tried to do it legally. So off I went. I still pocketed like $6k out of the deal, so that's cool. Stroke. Lease rates got jacked up and what little profit I had required heavily on the location. Couple of popular restaurants in my area had this happen to them. One of them was a British style tea room. Had been in the same spot for a decade. And had numerous awards for being one of the best places in town. Then the lease expired. Landlord tried to strong arm them into a much more expensive lease. They essentially flipped the guy off and closed shop. Left their numerous awards in the window with a sign saying basically, "Landlord hiked the lease. We appreciate your support all these years, but we are having to close." Double quote. Building has been empty for a good 2 years now because frankly nobody wanted to do business with the guy after that. Not me, but a family member is a case study in failure to run a good business. He's invested his entire life, time, money, into an industry which keeps changing. With little to no ROI. The business originally started during the .com boom with websites, but failed to sign up any notable clients. He also did not buy domains and squat on them like many did during that boom. Moved on to AdWords, SEO, selling tech support. All the work was done by an outsourced call center, who was managed by someone that ended up stealing from the business. Instead of learning from those mistakes and throwing in the towel, he moved on to app dev and reselling software. Now he's into blockchain and trying to monetize that. I've told him time and time again. Get a 9-5. Make 2x what you'll ever make running your own business. And enjoy your life. He's 38 now. Instead he's always chasing the next client. Chasing the next payday. And not ever having enough liquid to do anything worthwhile. We actually have a family business that has its 30th anniversary this year. The biggest thing we've seen other people screw up on? Expect to lose money for at least 5 years. Even a seemingly successful business isn't going to turn a profit immediately. It takes time to become a fixture that enough people know and trust to build up a good client base. So, have your business. But don't quit your normal job right away. Lots of things. I sold clothing wholesale. Had sales experience. But came from a different industry. It took a little bit to learn the law of the land and how things worked. Made home base where I did, and also currently live instead of moving to a more regional hub. This caused extra travel time and expenses when I could have been closer to my accounts. There's a reason why reps work out of those hubs. I was not prepared for the amount of stores who wouldn't pay. If an account gives you trouble about placing a deposit or prepaying, then you're probably not getting paid. Some of the lines we represented were off trend. We were newbies in the market, so we kind of went with what we could get. But there are reasons that longer established and larger firms were repping certain lines and not repping other lines. I didn't watch my business partner close enough and took him at his word. He was a lying piece of shit who was out for himself, and he no problem screwing me over and running off with some of the money we did have. I learned a lot though. And while I don't own a business currently, I certainly will be more prepared for when I try again. When it came to marketing channels, I didn't follow what the numbers said was working. I had my heart set on building a blog to promote my products. But all my sales success came from influencer marketing. If I had to do it over, I would have dropped the blog and put everything I could into the marketing channels that worked. I ended up over my head on the tech side of an online marketplace. I really thought I could learn it myself. It ended up being so mentally intensive that a lot of other areas of my business suffered. In hindsight, I should have built the back end before pushing forward. I existed in brick and mortar and had novel idea for an online marketplace. The bright side is that I never went into debt, and I now better know my own limitations. Failure is as valuable as it is painful. I've owned or been a partner in 3 different businesses. 2 were very successful. 1 not so much. The one that failed was a commercial office furniture dealership. I work in that field. The simplistic reason why it's failed: we started the company, it was in 2008. Right as the economy in my area fell apart. I was also surprised by my wife at the time with a request for a divorce. So, 1 new business, 2 bad economy, 3 divorce. I'm certain I could have handled a combination of any 2 of those. But not all 3. That was the extent of my limitations. Lack of self-confidence. This was about 23 years ago, when the web was really taking off. I knew it was going to be huge, and I knew that businesses really needed to be online. But my lack of self-confidence kept me from convincing others. It really held me back. And after a year and a half I had to find a full-time job. But I don't regret the time I spent trying. In 2001, the web development firm I was working for, and we had done some really high-profile projects, burst in the dot-com bubble, and the resulting recession kept me from finding another full-time position. But everything I had learned from them, plus what not to do the first time, meant that I was able to freelance for the next 8 years. So I always tell people to go for it. It may or may not work out, but you learn so much and it takes you where you need to be. It sucked, but I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything. Currently running a VR startup on the side, so I haven't failed per se, but I've learned a few things. Actually have a product. I can't tell you how many people in the Bay Area think you can just get by on vaporware to get funding. The first thing a potential investor will do if they don't see a product, and only bullshit marketing videos and PowerPoints, walk out the f-king door. As others have already pointed out, keep a fine line between you and your partners. It's okay if they're friends, but always make sure you're in it to start and run a successful business. I've had more than a few buddies burn out on the startup, and have never heard from them again. Take from it what you will. I feel all of your pain. I actually became the CEO of an already existing small delivery company. Firstly, I blamed everything on my predecessor. I then spent a majority of our profits in advertising in order to entice our larger, more successful competitor into buying us out. Unfortunately, while we were in the process of finalizing the buyout, I succumbed to my pre-existing condition of boneritis. My only regret is that I didn't cure my boneritis, which was curable at the time. Guess intergalactic space delivery wasn't my niche. We were in the process of getting acquired by Amazon. They were doing their due diligence when out of nowhere our lead dev got diagnosed with aggressive stage 4 cancer. He died a few weeks later and Amazon backed out because of it. Sometimes things just fail and are outside your control completely. We went under shortly after. Brutal. So sorry for you and your team. It was rough. But the worst of it is I think he honestly might still be alive today if we hadn't have made the game. We all put in a lot of late nights while working our day jobs on top of it. We neglected our health to get to a point where we could release or sell the game to a publisher. Startups are rewarding and an adventure like nothing else. But don't let them kill you. R.I.P. Rodney. I wish I knew better so I could fix it. I have a successful private practice in therapy. But then I also created a therapeutic product I can't sell. I'm really proud of it. People use it in my office all the time. But I can't sell them worth sh*t. I guess it is the website that is the weak link. I've redone it a bunch but just don't get conversions. No matter what cost I set them at, without going too obviously low. I'm not ready to call them a complete failure. Though. Yet. Not me. Per se. But my stepfather. He bought an auto repair business from his former boss who ran the place thinking that his loyal clientele, friends and some local businesses, and his hard work ethic would be enough to keep the business going. Not having any experience in management or running a business. He was a high school dropout and couldn't manage money at all. When he would get frustrated over bills, usually not managing money well enough to ensure they were paid, he would appoint me as the guy to figure them out. So when the phone was shut off, 7-year-old me was sent in to figure out how we were going to pay that phone bill so we could get our phones turned back on. Stroke. Shop closed up about a year after I left and joined the army. My stepfather is one of the hardest working guys I've ever known. Often working 14-16 hours days just going to home long enough to get some sleep and back at it again the next day. Sometimes Sundays if it was busy. You can have the biggest and best work ethic ever but if you can't manage money, you can't run a business. Stroke. Shop closed up about a year after I left and joined the army. My stepfather is one of the hardest working guys I've ever known. Often working 14-16 hours days just going to home long enough to get some sleep and back at it again the next day. Sometimes Sundays if it was busy. You can have the biggest and best work ethic ever but if you can't manage money, you can't run a business. I have the entrepreneurial bug. But I suck at follow through. And apparently I haven't been passionate about any of them enough to stick through the long term. My last one I started a soccer equipment company. But as you can imagine, it's dominated by a few big names. All of my failures aside, the one thing that frustrated me that I didn't foresee is all of the bigger organizations already have deals in place. For example, I know women's soccer in the US has struggled over the years with a number of leagues going under. So I figured I could support their current league by advertising with them, while also benefiting from a cheaper ad rate which was ideal for a startup. Nope. Sorry. We already have a deal with Nike. So we can't advertise your soccer related products. So, if I'm selling beef jerky, I can get some pro soccer player to hawk my goods. But not if it's related to the market the athletes is in. I understand this in a situation where you have a solid foundation in your business league. But not in a market that's seen a number of failures before. It made me feel like I'd be less sympathetic if the next league goes under. If you can't keep people in the seats to keep your league going, perhaps you shouldn't be negotiating exclusivity and shutting out other potential revenue streams. Rant. My first failed business was in the medical wearable tech space. It didn't work out because although the science was sound, we found out people just didn't need it in focus groups. It was as I am not forking out $200 to do another thing to do that reminds me of my sucky situation. I'll just take a painkiller and spend the time playing with my kids. I think it was a good learning experience. My current business in the non-tech space is steady. But I want to say it isn't growing as quickly as it can just because I don't have enough gusto to take big risks and super minor part poor luck with co-founders.